Hello, I'm Marisa Bretherton-Mackay, Group Support and Business Operations Manager at RDA UK. In this webinar, which is part of the Road to Restart series, I'll be talking you through the process of completing your Road to Restart Trustee Checklist. This is one of several key documents designed to help you work step by step through the different elements that you'll need to make sure are in place before you can reopen safely after lockdown. So, there's a lot to think about before you can start to make firm plans. Many groups have been out of action for a year or so, and bringing your team back, even just to start discussing how you can start to return to any kind of activity at all, can seem a bit of a daunting task. We'd recommend holding a trustee meeting first to discuss and agree your approach. As trustees, you'll need to feel comfortable with the processes that you'll need to follow and to understand what's going to be expected of everyone involved. Make sure you involve your coaches, your key volunteers, and the wider team. Let them know that you're starting to plan, as it'll be a real morale boost for everyone to know that things are starting to move forward again. Make sure you've read and understand the rules in your area and read the accompanying Road to Restart guidance notes, the Are You Ready document, and the separate glossary of terms before you begin. You can download all of these resources along with your checklist directly from myrda.org.uk. So there are 7 separate sections to complete on the checklist. You'll need to be able to answer all of the questions relating to each section in order to be able to see signed off to begin activity again. The questions cover your venue and the session environment, the equines you'll be using, the group volunteers or any staff employed by your group, the coaching sessions, your participants, the COVID risk assessment document, and consent forms for all involved. If you can't yet sign off each section completely, don't worry. You can use the questions as a useful tool just to plan your schedule with your team of the areas that still need to be covered so that you can be signed off in future. This may take a while, but at least you're on track. You might only be able to answer yes to some of the sections. So if you're just planning to return for volunteer training or to start to bring your horses back to work, you can still be signed off for just these activities, as long as you've also completed a relevant COVID risk assessment, which we cover in a separate presentation, without having to cover all of the requirements for the participants section, for example. You'll just need to make sure as well that you send in an updated, fully completed checklist, answering yes to all of the questions when you're ready to start working with participants again, so that we can give you the green light to welcome them back. Right, the first section looks at your questions relating to your venue, including a deep clean of the session and access areas, stocking up on sanitizers and cleaning products, setting up socially distanced zones, and you'll also need plenty of clear signage, which you can download from the MyRDA website to help everyone to understand what it is that they need to do on site. The next section focuses on your equines and their fitness and readiness for RDA work. You'll need to make sure your horses and ponies have been assessed using the Road to Restart equine assessment and induction sheet, and importantly, that you have your group's equines been accustomed to the COVID environment, including people wearing face coverings and other PPE, and the possible strong, unusual smells of sanitizers. There are some great film tutorials on myrda.org.uk and also on this MyRDA YouTube account, which give guidance on how to steadily acclimatise your horses to PPE. So on to the next section, we're now looking at the volunteers and their readiness to return. Hopefully you'll have been able to keep in touch with your network of volunteers during lockdown, but don't worry, it's never too late to make contact again. Key to being able to restart will of course be making sure that you've got enough experienced volunteers to be able to run your sessions, but activity is likely to be more limited in the short term, and so you'll also need to be prepared to manage volunteers' expectations. It might not be possible for everyone to return for a while, so keeping your team motivated and engaged whilst they wait their turn will be really important. All volunteers returning will of course need induction into your COVID protocols. We've all been away for a while, so be prepared to invest some time in revisiting basic training and practicing new, socially distanced ways of working. All volunteers must complete and return a consent form before they can come back on site and take part in any activity at all, including working with equines or taking part in training sessions. Next, we're going to look at your coaching. Is your coach or coaches ready and willing to be able to take sessions again? You'll need to be able to make sure that you've got all of the usual core elements in place. Are your first aid and safeguarding needs able to be covered? Do you have a plan for your sessions to keep your participants engaged and interested, even though their sessions might not be quite the same as before? Don't forget to complete your usual coaching session risk assessments for each activity taking place, in addition to the COVID risk assessment document. Moving on to participants, We're all excited to start opening our doors to participants again, and this is such an important area and does need careful consideration for safety, but also to ensure that our riders and drivers have the most positive experience they can once they're able to return. Despite our best efforts, we may have lost touch with some of our participants during lockdown, but now's the time to start making contact again to find out which are willing and able to return. Some may understandably be simply nervous, and the new COVID landscape may seem a bit unsettling at first, but it's important that you talk to them and their families or carers to let them know what to expect when they do come back to your group again for the first time after lockdown. It's important to assess participants' suitability to return, so you can use the participant assessment tool on the MyRDA website, and you'll need to carefully consider who can return first under the COVID protocols and who may need to wait just a little bit longer so they can safely be given the support they might need. Don't forget, everyone taking part will need to return a signed consent form first. Along with the Road to Restart Trustee Checklist, completed for the activities that you'll need to be signed off for, you'll also need to prepare a COVID-specific risk assessment and then send both documents into RDA National Office for the attention of the group support team for approval before you can begin. It's important to remember that this COVID RDA risk assessment is in addition to your venue and normal session activity risk assessments. We've put together a separate presentation focusing specifically on how to complete this special risk assessment, which is also available on my RDA YouTube channel. Don't forget, if you don't send these forms into us and you're not officially signed off, you may not be covered by RDA insurance. So the final section, we're looking at consent forms. Just a reminder that anybody taking part in any RDA activity after lockdown must sign and return a completed consent form before getting involved again. Also, with conversations around coronavirus risk and vulnerabilities and the rollout of the COVID vaccine programme, this might be a good time to have discreet conversations with anyone deemed more at risk of infection in line with the government and NHS guidance, just to make sure that they understand and accept any personal risk involved, even with the group's COVID protocols in place. It might also be helpful to speak with adult volunteers and staff regarding their preferences after any COVID vaccination they may have chosen to have. It might be that those already have been vaccinated might feel more confident in taking part directly in sessions for a while compared to those who have not. You can accept new volunteers, but just make sure that the usual recruitment practices are followed, including the relevant disclosure check for over 16s and that references have been received. New volunteers will obviously also need to complete a COVID consent form before joining in any way. If you're training family or household or bubble members, as we call them, to assist individual participants in sessions, they'll need to complete a consent form too and be signed off on the COVID basic training record sheet for that session. Once you've completed your Road to Restart Trustee Checklist and the COVID risk assessment, you can either email them to the group support team at groupsupport@rda.org.uk, or you can post them to us here at National Office. We'll aim to review your forms as soon as we can. It's currently around 3 days, and hopefully then we'll be able to give you the good news that you can begin. We really hope this short introduction to the Road to Restart Trustee Checklist has been helpful. Please don't forget to speak with your regional teams to keep them up to date. They're there to help you, and it's really important that they know your plan so they can support you along the way. Finally, we've added some useful links to this final slide, including not only the MyRDA website, but also gov.uk and the HSE, or the Health and Safety Executive site, for the most up-to-date advice and rules on coronavirus. If you need any further support, the RDA Group Support team is always on hand for tips and advice, and you can email us at groupsupport@rda.org.uk or call us 01926 492 915.